Welcome, everyone. Thank you guys for joining us for the second to last community spotlight of the Open Web Foundry. We're all very happy to have you here, and we're also very happy to show you the 5 projects that we're going to have present today. Also, as an update, stay tuned for more information on Demo Day, as we're going to be hosting that on Thursday, December 2nd, just in a few weeks from now. And we'll be posting more information on that from the Open Web Foundry Twitter, as well as sending emails to our mailing list. And if you guys have any questions about that, you can come find me in the Mingle area afterwards. So as I said, we have 5 projects today. The first one that we're going to have be presenting is an alumni from our previous Open Web Foundry. So please help me in welcoming Jordan and Axel. They're working on our Agora, which is a digital public square that lives on the permaweb. So you guys can come up and begin.
Hi everyone.
Hey Jordan.
So let me just go on with the screen sharing. Hello everyone, I'm Jordan, and today I'm going to present Agora, a completely decentralized social network fully hosted on Arwis blockchain. Presenting Agora is a good occasion to explain the state of traditional social networks today. Social networks on Web2 now has a major public adoption and represents more than 4 billion users. Social media companies arbitrarily decide their content policies without users having any voice in the matter, even though platform users are the value drivers for these companies. This situation gives a feeling of unfairness and leads to a general confusion about information authenticity. Here we are, Twitter's government deletion requests that's what we mean when we're talking about mutable content for Web2 social platforms. From all of those conclusions, we decided to build Agora. Our main purpose is to use Arwiv's immutable and decentralized storage to build the social networks that brings back transparency and trust to its users. From there, content management will have to follow on-chain consensus mechanisms that were not possible before. Here's the Agora team, composed of Axel at ByteDataGal, that is the original founder. He's a well-experienced full-stack developer that has been making a great work on Agora. As some of you maybe knows, I recently joined Agora team to help Axel going on this great adventure. Now, let's take a look at the evolution of Agora. Here's the timeline of Agora that sums up our development progress. In July this year, here's what Agora looked like. As you can see, the URL were quite minimalist, but you could already log in with R-Connect and post permanently using Arwiv's blockchains. Then we released the stable alpha version for the demo day with a more user-friendly UI and the first integration of virtual ID profiles. It became a digital public square for the Arwivers to hang out and express. And today, we're excited to release our beta version. This new version of Agora embeds lots of new features. You can post on each other profile timelines directly, but also have a look on members' activity on the Weave like before. On the right of the screen, each last active communities are updated dynamically, so you can see where the trend is. Agora's development is also community-driven. It is one of our main purposes to integrate relevant solutions of the ecosystem. To be fully Web3 with no off-chain data, we integrated R-Connect as a login solution. No sign-up button with your personal email. To have a more user-friendly vision of the profiles, we integrated virtual ID profiles. This means that every user with a virtual ID also has a profile on Agora. Agora is open to on-chain collaboration. The beta version introduces the integration of community.xyz. When you create a community on Agora, it creates a profit-sharing community on community.xyz and gives you PSTs associated that you can freely give away to other Arwivers. At the moment, those PSTs enable vote for a new banner and description. In the meantime, a Twitter to Agora bridge was developed by an Arwiver. This bridge automatically retweets any of your posts on Agora to your Twitter. we are working on adapting it to a new beta version and give an easy access to its interface. This is a great showcase on how it is possible to build around the Agora protocol, and we want to enable more of it in the future. Because we love our users and that we aim to attract new users, we are going to organize a community events on Agora. This community spotlight is a good opportunity for me to announce you that on this next Monday, we are going to launch our first community photo contest to celebrate our beta release with cash prizes for the 3 first places. Stay tuned on Agora team Twitter page or on agora.xyz to get all the incoming information about the contest. Photos will be uploaded to the Winter Photo Contest community on Agora. I hope you find this as interesting as we do. Check agora.xyz out and come meet us at the Mingle area. We'd love chatting to you. Thanks and see you on Agora.
Thank you, Guy. Thank you very much. Thanks for shouting out my Agora profile to help me grow my following on there. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I've been using this a lot. I've even been communicating about the Foundry events through there. So definitely really excited for the developments and also this contest coming up. So thank you guys very much, Jordan and Axel.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
And then next up for our presenters who will now all be within this cohort of the Foundry, we have Doug, who's been working on PeerPiper. And this is a next generation protocol and wallet that enables Web3 users to save, share, and sell their data privately without any signups or downloads. Thank you, Doug, for being here.
Thanks for having me, Jesse. Can you see me all right?
Yeah.
Just about to share my screen. We good?
Yeah, looks good. Yeah, I would just hide the little notification at the bottom there.
Yeah, of course. There we go. Well, good day, everybody. I'm Doug Anderson, and today I'm going to cover PeerPiper's integration with Arweave so we can encrypt data on Arweave and share it easily. I'm going to cover sort of 3 projects that I've been hacking on over the course of the Open Web Foundry 5, which is Rlog, re-encryption, and then a next generation experimental wallet that I've been working on. So the first off is Rlog, and for those of you who are familiar with Arweave, as you probably all are, and also IPFS, every time we upload something to Arweave or IPFS, we get a dynamic generated address, either a transaction ID or a content ID for IPFS. And this is really, really annoying if you want to pin a data to a specific place. So I thought, well, it would be really neat if we've got these static contract transaction IDs for SmartWeave, and if we could just have an append-only log of all those transactions, and the latest, in this case, version 3 of the update, would be reflected as the most recent read state of the smart contract ID, because of course that's fixed. And the reason why I got into Web3 in the first place was I had moved several times, and I didn't have a place to give everybody my address. I hate updating those accounts that you have to sign up for online. And so I thought, well, there's got to be a Web3 way we can do this. So that's what generated this. But of course, ideally, we'd like to be able to encrypt the data too. Every time we update it, it would be nice if we could encrypt it. And why is that? Well, I just pulled this off of the Discord today. Please don't steal the NFTs. Shout out to Ross. And wouldn't you, you wouldn't download an NFT. The truth of the matter is, most of the data that's on the Web3 right now, a lot of it is not encrypted. It's all plain text. If you've got an NFT, you may own it and you have the token rights to it, but the actual asset itself is usually out there in plain sight. However, if you encrypt it and you have an Rlog version of each step, every version along the way, and you encrypt it, what you can do is start granting access. So I started off with version 1, and maybe I want to give Alice access to it. And maybe then down the line, I want to give Bob access to it. And then maybe I want to charge Charlie for access to it. And then I update the next version of it. Maybe this is an app. Maybe this is a template. Maybe this is an NFT that morphs along the way. It doesn't really matter what it is, because we can save anything to Web3 and Arweave and IPFS. But the point is, as the version changes, you can revoke and grant access and charge for it as we go. However, in order to do this, we realized you need a scheme that allows you to control access after uploading it. And encryption is great, but you also want to minimize key management headaches, and you want to not expose the plain text every time you want to grant access to someone. So essentially, we've got a couple of options. You can encrypt things with a symmetric key, but then every time you want to give that key to someone, you've got to have the key in plain text and re-encrypt it to someone else's symmetric key or an address. So it turns out that re-encryption, homomorphic re-encryption, is a really great match for Web3 storage, because it enables me to have really easy key management. Your ID is your key, and that's it. Only you can decrypt it. I don't have to expose the plain text of either the asset that's stored on Arweave or the key itself. And everybody gets their own unique keys. So only those who you allow access have access to the data. But unfortunately, the other thing we realized is re-encryption schemes utilize elliptic curves. And Arweave uses RSA curves. And even if they didn't, there's really no wallet support for re-encryption schemes like this. So we need a new wallet. But as it turns out, we kind of need a new wallet anyway. And let me get into why that is. I stumbled upon this a couple of days ago just by gold. I'm happy to share the YouTube link with anybody who wants it. But it's Ivan on Tech essentially interviewing a new layer 2 and saying the only problem is the wallet problem. It's all about who can convince MetaMask to integrate this thing. It's basically MetaMask, who control the users right now on Ethereum. And yes, that applies to Ethereum, but it also applies to most other places that we use Arweave, or that we use wallets. We have the same issue on Solana. We have the same issue on Arweave. We've got a wallet, and it's the browser extension, and you're kind of siloed into it, and everybody kind of drifts towards it because, well, that's the wallet you use. It's sort of the status quo. But I got thinking back. Remember, way back in the day, what is it, 4 or 5 months ago, before RConnect came out, we dragged key files right into the browser. You may remember this, and you may also remember thinking, "Wow, this is really cool. This gives the developer a lot of flexibility." But there's obviously an inherent risk there if you drag your key file into a malicious site. They say, "Thank you very much. We love to have your private key, and we're going to drain your account," which is, the way things went. Next along came the browser extensions. We thought, okay, well, that's great. Let's not drag it into the browser anymore. Let's store it in a browser extension. But now, again, the issues that Ivan on Tech kind of alluded to, we're kind of locked in, and there's not a whole lot of autonomy. You get to choose from the list of wallets that choose to integrate your layer 2. So I, was wrestling with all of this, and I thought, what does that conversation look like between a prospective user on Arweave or anywhere in Web3 that says, the user says, I don't want to download or install anything on my mobile. Do you guys have something in your dApp that just works on my phone? And inevitably the developer says, no, sorry. Oh, it's desktop only. Oh, and you have to download it, and only from a small list of our choosing, not yours. And it's kind of only from the list of wallets that choose to integrate our schemes, which is unfortunate for new protocols. So I got to thinking, can't we solve for both? Can't we have something that's really, really flexible, like dragging those keys into the browser, but also the security of something more like a web extension? So what if we dragged the key file only into one site? I thought this was great. If I can control the one site that I dragged my key file into, that would be great. But how? I mean, every app has a different URL. Well, what if we choose the one site and we put that into an iframe? Now that iframe can be embedded in any site. And all we would have to do is have the dApp, just like it does with a browser extension, post messages back and forth to the iframe that has our secret key and say, hey, can you sign this for me? Or in my case, can you encrypt this for me? Can you re-encrypt this to someone else for me? That would be great. So it ends up that, these things are in different browser contexts. So the browser already sandboxes it for us, which is great. So we get the security. The developer integration is one protocol for any wallet. We don't really care what's behind the other side of that iframe as long as they're using the same protocol. We're great. And the user can actually choose the default or choose their own URL. And I'll show you how in a second. And the beautiful thing about this is, the iframe, because it's just a website, it can be hosted on Arweave. It can be hosted on IPFS. You can run it locally on localhost, or you can even, run it in Deno. I know there's some Deno fans out there, or Deno, however you want to pronounce it. And Deno sandboxes all the JavaScript V8 in a Rust box on your own machine. So if you're really, really paranoid and you don't want anybody taking your key, you could run this iframe in Deno on your own machine and still talk to any dApp you want. This gives us really, really ultimate flexibility. It means the development integration is, one line of code for infinite wallets, infinite key types, and infinite change, because all you have to do is insert the protocol iframe into your dApp. And this could be in addition to any other, browser extension dApp that you wanted to. And the user can choose or use the default. So, easily shift the iframe URL to, localhost or somewhere on IP address or wherever Arweave, wherever you want. It's really up to the user. So in the end, what does this give us? I went a lot into the wallet because I'm really, really excited about this new paradigm. But together, what we get is a log on Arweave where we can upload data to an updatable fixed link. And the re-encryption wallet gives us the ability to encrypt that and then issue and then revoke. We can take away permissions with next versions if we want, or charge based on the user's public key. And so I'm really excited about this. I've come up with a couple of catchphrases that I'd like to put to the community. Let me know which one's your favorite. I like putting the cryptography back in crypto, making Web3 decentralized again, or both. I like them both. So I'd love to hear your feedback on these. So thank you for hearing me out. I'd like to hear your feedback on the iframe wallet and what we could do with that. And my project is Pure Piper. We're here to connect your data, not collect it.
That's a good quote. I like that. Thank you very much.
My thing's gone, so now I have to. There we go.
Yeah, thank you very much, Doug,
You're welcome.
for solving a problem that is really important in Web3 right now. And as someone who's changed addresses often myself, being able to not have to sign up and download something for every dApp I use would be great.
There you go.
So thank you very much for building this, and thank you for presenting today. And everybody can find Doug in the Mingle area once we're finished.
Yep, I'll be hanging out.
Perfect. Okay, and then so next up for our third presenter, we have Art by City, and this will be presented by Jim and Slava. And what Art by City is it is a place. It ensures that artists have their own space on the permaweb to cultivate a permanent presence for their work. So you guys can come up to the spotlight tiles here. And then Doug, if you could just walk off the tile there. Perfect.
Guys, let me share my screen real quick.
Hello, everyone.
Cool. You guys can see this?
Yep.
Awesome. All right. We are Art by City. My name is Jim, and joining with me is my friend Slava. Today, we are going to talk a little bit about metadata and a little bit about licensing. So if any of you are unfamiliar, this is the manifest URL JSON schema standard for NFTs. This is suggested in ERC 721 of how to craft your JSON file to describe the asset that the NFT represents. And so you can see it's very simple. It just has 3 properties: name, description, and then the actual asset, whether it's a URI or the data URL itself. As you can imagine, this is pretty limiting, with not much ability to add anything else, such as artists, like the medium, when it was created, or any of this other information. So I think this is called the engine standard, the ERC 1155, which is typically what most NFTs implement for the most part. I think this actually has some standard for semi-fungibility, which is why it's got decimal property in there, but we can ignore that for now. Point is, this added the concept of arbitrary properties to the metadata standard. As you can see on the final property there, that could be any strings, numbers, objects, or arrays. Means that it could be infinitely deep with any information or any metadata that the NFT creator wants. And so here we see OpenSea's suggestions, which these are just what OpenSea looks for when they go to display your NFT. So one thing that people don't understand typically is that when you make an NFT, in order to display that NFT, the NFT wallet or website needs to know the shape of the data, if you will, the structure of the data, so it knows how to display that NFT in the way that you want. And so these are kind of some suggestions from OpenSea that they've provided that they specifically support. Now, this might not necessarily work on any other NFT wallet or another website like Rarible, for example. And then additionally, OpenSea has this attributes field where that's kind of their weird little gamification kind of thing on top of it, which is unique to OpenSea. And so the problem we see with this is that here's where we started with our metadata for what an artwork is. At the very basics, this is what we think should be included. Well, maybe not hashtags, but with artwork data when we're publishing to Arweave. You can see there's a published date, a creator, very rudimentary right now, just their Arweave address, a title, a URL slug, which could match up, so it's searchable. Description, type of image it is, whether it's a photograph, any hashtags, and then something we're going to talk about later, licensing. And so I think at the very least, right now we're tracking, I guess we're using the example of open source software licenses, which aren't really applicable. And we're using a software library provided by spdx.org, which contains thousands and thousands of software licenses, which none of which are appropriate for the art world. Some of them are maybe, but yeah, they're mostly for software, and they're really weird things like beer license and stuff like that. Right, and so actually here I want to talk about how we have in the images property, we either could store the URL to where, or an Arweave transaction ID to where the image is, or store the data URL in base64 format of the image data itself in the manifest file. And there would be a couple reasons why we might want to do something like that. One means that the uploader has control of whether their images are directly externable on traditional sites, as an image is linked directly rather than being embedded in JSON, where it then would have to be read and embedded into an image tag. So that means that people wouldn't be able to link things externally without the artist's permission. Another reason why we might do that is because the data itself and the metadata representing that data sit within the same transaction, which might be important to the artist. The reason why I started highlighting the NFT metadata structure is that we don't think that NFTs are necessarily the base case to publish content onto Arweave. And so we believe that the artist should be aware of this and, I guess, be okay with the shape of that data. As you can imagine, in order to turn an Art by City artwork into an NFT, these would all have to go into that properties section in this JSON format. In addition to that, you can imagine there was Arweave transaction metadata. Here's an example of an art piece uploaded by our friend Kevin. Obviously, this is all encrypted, so you can't read it, but this is how it's directly returned from the node. And so this is something we're interested in educating artists about, or content creators about. This is data that is always associated with your transaction. These are the field. This is what these fields mean. Just so they're aware, how exactly their data is being represented when they interact with the blockchain, and what others are going to see when they come across their data. For example, the owner, how much fee they paid to get it there. Which really starts this history of their metadata of the art piece on the blockchain. And then here is that same piece, the actual data requested from the transaction, and this is what we uploaded in our format. You can see it's got a description. License is a little filled in more with some weird information that's not applicable. So yeah, you can see, like I said, we're storing the image in the data URL directly in the manifest file in this instance. And so what that looks like, that same transaction on ViewBlock, it's presented nicely for us. So we can see that, in addition to all of the data about the artwork, we're also tagging it with our app name and our app version, the content type, its category, so we can discover it later, and the slug that the user's chosen, so we can discover it later. And then this is what it would look like displayed in our prototype app. So to the end user, as they're uploading things, they're only going to see what's exactly displayed. But we're kind of concerned with the whole picture, and if the artist or content creator is okay with not only the shape of their data, but aware of all of the other things involved and what those mean. For example, the owner field, right? That can't be changed. So if you lose that wallet, then it becomes hard to prove that you were the original person that represents, unless there's other kind of real world data tied to that, such as artist verification. And so the other part of the metadata that's important that we keep highlighting is the license. And so far, we haven't really seen anything, even in the NFT space, about licensing. In fact, we're seeing that minted on one domain, I suppose, that offers the promise of secondary royalties from secondary sales, if sold on another domain, does not honor those royalties, which would seem a violation of a license that isn't in writing. So first of all, that should be baked into the smart contract. Second of all, the license should be easily visible next to the data itself. And so the only thing we really have seen in the industry is exactly that at the top middle of the screen. Copyright transfer, true. That is the only thing we've seen about any consideration about any type of rights transfer or licensing in the NFT space, or just any in the blockchain space at all. So I'm gonna we've done a little bit of research talking to artists about licensing and how we can help there, and what the current support in their ecosystem is like, what options they kind of have. And so, we really saw a parallel between how we have so many endless options in the software world, and now that we're digitizing art is data itself as well. We're interested in seeing if there are any way we can collaborate between the open source software license world with the art world to see if there's some type of art open source license or flavors of that we can create for artists. So I'll let Slava talk about what we've come up with for license, or what we've researched for licensing so far.
Hello, everyone. I'm Slava. Thank you, Jim. After multiple interviews with artists, we realized that copyright and licensing is an issue, and it's not being addressed, as mentioned earlier. The issue seems to be that there isn't really a universal standard for copyright. Countries are different depending on where you create your art, where you sell your art. Different courts look at it differently. So we're trying to look at the standard that the United States and the EU has set. And we try to break it down to 4 categories that are easier to kind of funnel art into, or any kind of creation into. And those are all rights reserved, where the artist or creator keeps all the rights and doesn't sell any of it. Creative Commons is the next category, and then there's subcategories of derivatives or non-derivatives if it's non-commercial or commercial. And then straight commercial licenses for periods of time or for a lifetime. And the last category being an open license or free license that would allow the client or the user to be able to do whatever they want with that artwork. So it seems like these are the 4 categories that we're working with now. We take any suggestions from anyone in the audience on anything that we spoke about, and we'll be available for coffee and mingle if any of you guys are interested in speaking about copyright or licensing.
Yeah, we're definitely interested in speaking to anyone about like any metadata related concerns to anything with publishing to the permaweb. I really see us collaborating with multiple projects that are kind of interested in this to come up with kind of a universal standard for this, I suppose, if that makes any sense from a universal perspective. Our goal is really to be advocates for artists for the blockchain, so we don't really want to dictate what they should be doing. And so that's kind of why we're interested in both educating artists about what all the shape of all of this data is, and that, you know, if you're making an NFT, it looks exactly like this, and it has to look exactly like this. So definitely interested in hearing your guys' thoughts afterwards. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, guys.
And you can find us at gitlab.com/artbycity, and there's a Discord link here, which we can paste in the chat. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, guys. We'll also be posting all of these on YouTube. So if you guys need to find these links, you'll be able to find it probably tonight is when we'll post it. So thank you very much, Jim and Slava, for creating a space for artists to actually be able to have a space permanently. And then without further ado, so we have two more presenters left. So next up we have Pubweave. So help me in welcoming Albert, who is building Pubweave, a decentralized and permanent peer review academic journal.
Hello, Jesse. Thank you for having us. Let me know if you guys can see my screen. All good?
Yeah, looks good. Yeah, I would just hide the, I'll just go full screen and hide the gather town and sharing your screen notification. That should be fine. Perfect.
Is that good?
Yeah, I would just hide also the gather town and sharing your screen down there. Perfect.
All right. So, okay, so let's get started. So today I'll be presenting Pubweave, which is a project that really is baked into the academic system, and that's what we'd like it to be. You can sort of guess from the name, Pubweave. Pub comes from PubMed, Weave from Arweave or Blockweave. And our project is really central around the idea of open science NFT, and we'll see a little bit more about that later. What we want at the end is to create a recipe for democratic, sustainable, and permanent science. That's the end goal here. So let's keep that in mind for the rest of the presentation. So who we are, we're a team of a bunch of academic scientists and developers, and we're sort of come from varied backgrounds, even though we all know each other, collaborated at some points, but still we're really in different subfields of science, if you want to call it that way. And a little bit of highlights from the team. So we've been in academia for a very long time. We have more than 40 papers published, peer-reviewed. We worked on a lot of open source projects. And if you want to combine the number of years from everything that we've been doing in academia, then that would sort of get to a century of number of years. I know people like to count that up, so I thought it was funny to sort of say a century. And special thanks for our sponsors, Bluer and Project Catalyst for funding also, because we're working on a marketplace that is sort of in the same vein, getting science accessible to the public through art that we're working on as well. So thank you for having us here, and I'd like to welcome everyone here to the science revolution, which we'd like to call it, because even though science is a process that's been iterated upon for a number of years, it doesn't mean that it can't drastically be improved. Right? When you have a big system that is built around something, you sort of get into a very complicated sort of system that is hard to change, and that's precisely what we're trying to do here. So first of all, let's start with a paradox to sort of explain where we guys come from. So this comes from a shared experience that we all have in the team. So science in academia is funded by public money, right? It's public funds that fund it. But in a lot of cases, or most cases, the public has to pay to access the science. When you're looking at a paper, for example, that is interesting, and if you don't have a subscription through your university or whatever, sometimes it can go up to $30, $40, and that's in US dollars. Or if you want to publish, and you can publish in open access, well, that's still very expensive, and the fees are around $3,000 and can go way more than that. So an interesting thing to keep in mind is that this is in US dollars, right? And for North Americans, it's still, right, it's still hard to get access to a bunch of papers if you're buying each one for $30 or renting. Even it's so expensive that they have renting options now, as you can see in this example here. So imagine the rest of the world where the currency is really devalued against the US dollar. And so that sort of creates a problem. So we thought about an ideal system of publishing peer-reviewed papers and getting science accessible to the public. What we need is really minimum barriers, and the science should be permanent, right? There shouldn't be any issue around that, which sounds obvious, right? It has to be non-censorable. This is science. The only thing that should matter is the scientific method and ethics, but not more than that. And it should be anti-fragile. So anti-fragile or robust, which is the dictionary word for it, means that a system doesn't have a central point of failure, or maybe an unexpected event cannot really destroy that system. So you can kind of see where I'm going with this. Centralization versus decentralization is probably, I would say, 80 to 90% of the answer here. And if we can go one step further, then decentralizing a system like this. So if you think about the sort of publishing companies right now, the biggest publishing companies in academia, they're all centralized. They're just one big company that has many journals, for example, and it's all controlled by a single entity. Whereas if you take that out of the Web 2 space, it would translate directly into a DAO, right? In the Web 3 and sort of cryptocurrency space. And as you all know, a DAO has very exciting features that lets that system sort of evolve by itself and being governed without a centralized point of failure or centralized point of censorship, right? So when I say censorship, it doesn't really mean that there's a conspiracy and people don't want to publish certain things, even though sometimes there are reports of papers being not being accepted could be for some reasons, and then there's always this kind of thing. So if you can just remove that thought, right? Just be like, maybe we can create a system where this is not even an option, then it's always better, right? Why wouldn't you want this? And furthermore, a big, I would say, feature of a DAO is that it's baked in, as you all know, the code and the structure is baked in. And what you can enforce here is long-term incentives. And the advantage of this is that people will look at your system and say, okay, so I agree with it. And also, I'm sure that this is not going to change for the foreseeable future, at least. And so the solution is a mixture of both. Okay, so NFTs are really an amazing way to sort of create a unique piece of evidence for your work with more characteristics, right? You can take this a step further and can share it. You can have sort of derivatives of your NFT that you can maybe create, or where you can create an artistic representation, for example, of your paper, of your science, and maybe take that to a marketplace and start selling it. Or other cool properties of NFTs is that they're inside the system, and so what you can start doing things like staking against the NFTs, and that brings the concept of liquid NFTs that has been presented many times here at Arweave. And so researchers or other people can start staking against ideas or research that they like to see more of. And that sort of creates a whole new economic model of funding science. Furthermore, what you can also do is create, like I said, long-term incentives inside your DAO that would be controlling this sort of academic ecosystem that we call PubWeave. And the idea is that you have a profit-sharing community, for example, that has profit-sharing tokens. But what you can do is you can add a sort of a rule, right? So if you imagine the system where the money that is needed to publish, instead of being paid, for example, by the author to publish in open source, it's being funded by a treasury. And that treasury is being funded by the network effect of your ecosystem. Well, if you can create a scenario where you only can get dividends from your PSTs when there's a certain condition that was met, for example, if you say, and if I can secure funding for the following 10 years from my treasury, then it will start paying dividends. Then you just align the incentives of your token holders with the end goal of the project that you're building. And so if you want to summarize this whole idea in one sentence or bullet points, you can view it in both terms. So PubWeave would be a full stack peer review academic ecosystem where funding is secured by a treasury, and that's the crucial part of it, with perpetual endowment structure, and that's where the 10 years or 5 years or 20 years comes in. Now that you have money that you just use, that just gains interest, and you use that to start financing your publications, and that is governed by a DAO, obviously, or a PSC. So with that, I would like to thank you all. You can check us at our website, GitHub. So we have, right now, if you go to GitHub, we have a working model where you can connect to our Connect. So Louis, our web developer, has started with this. It's still primitive, but that's the first integration that we have, and we're building this as fast as we can. You can also follow us on Twitter at Open Science NFT, and you can also email us if you have any questions. Thank you all for listening.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Albert. As someone who's had a short stint in academia, it's astounding the lack of transparency and paywalls there are in the world of academic publications. So I think we're all very happy that someone in the Arweave community is actually tackling this problem. So thank you very much for presenting today. Perfect. Okay. So our last presenter, but certainly not least, is Sharon, who's going to be presenting WorkerDAO. And the focus of WorkerDAO is to reorganize how work happens in a DAO in the Web3 world. So Sharon, please come to the stage and show us what you've been working on.
Hey, Jesse, do you hear me? I'm just going to try sharing my screen.
Yep, hear you loud and clear.
Okay, let me just see if this works. Is my screen visible?
Yeah, looks good.
Okay, perfect. So hi, everyone. I'm Sharon. Just to give some background, I'm group CTO of a public company that's valued at over $1 billion. I have some experience building on Web 2, which is what excited me about Web 3 and what's possible. Today, I'm going to present WorkerDAO, which is an operating system for collaborative work. So yeah, what does this mean? Let's get started, right? Collaborating on anything is difficult. This is something that we know through experience. And this increases by an order of magnitude when you consider the decentralized nature of a DAO, right? Because as the amount of participants increase, or as the amount of nodes increase, the complexity of collaboration increases proportionate to the nodes of the network. And this is observed in real life as well, because like as of 2 days ago, if you look at the fourth quarter of 2021, the top 3 DAOs, which is Uniswap, BigDAO, and Lido, had almost $8 billion in their treasury assets. Yet, if you look at the entire year, only 81 proposals got passed, and the top 2 DAOs, which is Uniswap and BigDAO, have only just 12 proposals. And the average voter participation was less than 0.5%, which is pretty abysmal if you think about it. So it's no secret there are gaps between coordination and collaboration, even with the biggest DAOs today. And if you were to unpack this a little bit, you realize that most DAOs operate in a really inefficient manner. From one hand, you have a proposal-based mechanism that requires a lot of work. So, for example, you have to get a team together, you have to submit a proposal, you have to get people to vote on your idea, and then you have to get someone to validate it. And on the other hand, you have smaller tasks, which are like, updating a wiki or submitting something on Twitter. And while these ideas are easy to execute, they're difficult to scale because of inherent inefficiencies with the way task discovery, execution, and validation happens, right? So what this means is that like finding good tasks, getting people to execute on them, and then getting someone to validate that these tasks were done in the way that they should have been done is something that's difficult to do at scale, right? So what happens because of this is that a large part of the ecosystem ends up not contributing to a DAO, and this circulates back to the primary problem, which is that collaborating in a DAO is extremely difficult, right? To solve for this, we built a protocol called WorkerDAO, which is essentially an operating system for collaborative work. It handles collaboration permissionlessly. So let's just try and understand that a little bit. Here's how it works. First of all, DAO core team members submit a challenge according to a specific goal. So this can be something like a roadmap goal, like how we're going to simplify the user onboarding process. And then anyone who's part of a DAO can generate an idea, and other people can vote on this idea. And then this signals what the best ideas can be. And this is handled through like a profit-based prediction game where people get rewarded based on both generating ideas and voting for ideas. And the third interesting thing is that if an idea crosses a minimum threshold that's required, which is like a reputation threshold, it unlocks an automated bounty to incentivize participation. So now not only do you have like really good ideas being submitted, you have an incentive mechanism where people actually participate in these ideas and do this and then unlock a bounty. And the fourth part is that you also can then get like validation done, and that's also rewarded. Like this is done in an outsourced mechanism to prevent Sybil attacks and prevent people gaming the systems. There'll be a community that also validates these tasks and then ensures that they are done to a certain quality. And the best part of all of this is that attention is incentivized and rewarded. So regardless of if you are someone who's proposing an idea, someone who's voting, or someone who's validating an idea or executing an idea, everybody gets rewarded proportional to their participation. So that's essentially how the whole protocol works. I have some questions that I would like to ask from the community, and hopefully we can discuss this after the session finishes. The first question is, have you ever run a community and then like faced challenges with collaboration? We would like to understand what were some of the challenges you faced. And then the second question is like, what were the different initiatives you've taken to overcome this? We've kind and the third problem is of course a problem of like trust. How would you, in a scenario where you're collaborating with multiple other nodes in the network, how would you identify bad actors and how would you disincentivize negative behavior? So those are my questions, and let's discuss. I've intentionally kept this presentation a little bit ambiguous to spark better conversation. We can hang out after this session and talk about it, and you can DM me on Twitter or email me directly, and please come mingle in the Hangout area. Thank you for your time, and thank you for listening to my presentation.
Thank you very much, Sharon. It's obvious that the DAOs are like the backbone of Web3. So having a tool that enables us to optimize and make that better is excellent. And if anyone has any feedback for not just WorkerDAO but any of the projects, please feel free to join us in the Mingle area, which we'll head down to right now. So looking forward to seeing everybody down there. Yeah, stay tuned for demo day we got coming up, and then we have another deep dive on Wednesday, as well as our last community spotlight next Friday. So looking forward to seeing everyone there. Cheers, guys.